I showed up in New York unannounced and learned that my daughter was fading away in the hospital. At the same time, her husband was enjoying himself at a birthday celebration filled with giggles and bubbly drinks. So I stormed into the gathering and told him, "I've got some terrible news for you." He inquired, "What is it?" I answered, "You'll learn in an hour." He did learn and completely lost his composure. Before we go on, please hit subscribe on the channel and share in the comments where you're tuning in from. The key refused to budge. I twisted it with more force, sensing the metal grinding against an obstruction that didn't belong. My fingers throbbed from the tight hold, and perspiration dotted my brow even though the mild spring breeze floated through the corridor window. This wasn't normal. Mimi had handed me this key 2 years back, urging me to hold on to it for emergencies. I'd used it previously, like last Christmas when she was delayed from her job, and that occasion she had a bad cold. It had always functioned. I withdrew the key and inspected it beneath the unsteady fluorescent glow. Same golden hue, same eroded sides where I'd smoothed it with a file, same tiny mark near the top from when it fell into my tool chest. Absolutely my key. I attempted it once more deliberately this time. The key slipped inside but struck a firm barrier before going all the way. Somebody had swapped the lock. Mimi. My call bounced around the vacant hallway. I rapped on the door. Gentle knocks initially, then firmer ones. "Sweetheart, it's Dad. I'm here for my drop-in." No response. Not a hint of movement or the groan of wooden planks. I leaned my ear against the door, straining to hear beyond my pulsing heart. TV noises floated from adjacent units. Hushed chats. A canine yapping from downstairs somewhere. But from 3A Mimi's spot, quiet, the buzzer. I pressed it thrice, catching the piercing digital ring resounding within. Still no answer. My phone weighed down my jacket pocket. The trip from Pennsylvania had worn me out more than typical. Too many holdups, too much caffeine. Too many anxious musings about why Mimi hadn't replied to my messages this week. Now her voicemail kicked in right away. "Hi, you've reached Mimi Nelson. I'm unable to answer right now. But drop a message and I'll return your call shortly." That upbeat tone so reminiscent of her mom's. "Mimi, Dad here. I'm at your door, but the key's not cooperating. Did you switch the locks? Ring me back, dear." I'm starting to fret. I dialed Nelson next. A single ring, then his standard voicemail. "You've reached Nelson Hargrove. Leave your name and number." Nelson Amos speaking. "I'm at the place, but I can't enter. Where's Mimi? Call me right now." The corridor seemed tighter now, closing in around me. Aromas of cooking, onions, and something sizzling seeped from beneath doors. A sitcom's canned laughter erupted from Unit 3C. Typical Friday midday noises, but they clashed with my rising alarm. I strolled to the window at the hall's end, gazing down at the Brooklyn Avenue I'd journeyed 3 hours to arrive at. Vehicles inched by in the midday rush. Folks rushed along the pavements toting shopping sacks and coffee mugs, carrying on their ordinary routines while mine skewed off balance. This isn't like Mimi, she always picks up. Always responds within 60 minutes. Even when swamped with customers or arguing with Nelson, she carves out time for her old dad. That's her nature. Dependable, thoughtful. She inherited that from her mother. I rang Mimi's number once more. Same perky greeting, same digital tone. "Sweetie, Dad again. Issue with the lock. I'm truly getting concerned. Please get in touch." Perhaps I ought to have phoned ahead rather than springing this on her. But she adored surprises. Had since she was a kid. Recall the time I drove 6 hours to her university just to treat her to supper? She shed joyful tears right at the table. No, this felt off. This was a miss. I rested against her door, sensing the sturdy timber on my shoulder. My duffel bag felt weightier now, straining at muscles already fatigued from the travel. The overhead light hummed and wavered, throwing dancing shadows across the faded rug. Nelson's line jumped straight to voicemail this round. No rings at all, just that robotic prompt about leaving your details. He'd powered it down. Why would anyone alter the locks without informing kin? Why hadn't Mimi picked up for 2 weeks? Why would Nelson disable his phone when I had to contact them? The queries swirled in my mind like scavengers. Each one conjured grimmer scenarios. Mishaps, sickness, issues they couldn't manage solo. Issues they ought to have shared with me. I tried Mimi one final time. "The subscriber you're trying to reach is unavailable." Not her recording this time. A carrier's automated notice. Her device was off as well. Steps resounded from the staircase. Someone ascending the cement treads. Keys clinking with every step. Perhaps the super. Someone who could clarify the locks. Or maybe it was Mimi at last returning to sort it all out. I faced the stairwell, optimism and fear clashing in my torso as the steps neared. A guy emerged at the landing, a bit winded, holding a black trash sack in one hand and keys in the other, mid-50s, dressed in worn denim and a Yankees tee that had better times. He halted upon spotting me by Mimi's door, his brows lifting in slight astonishment. Searching for somebody? He switched the trash sack to his opposite hand, keys tinkling gently. My daughter, Mimi Nelson, she resides here. I pointed at 3A. I'm her dad, Amos Cox. Your daughter? He placed the trash sack down and eyed me with real bewilderment. I wasn't aware Mimi had relatives stopping by. I'm Harold Jenkins, 3B. He indicated the door beside Mimi's. She doesn't know I'm arriving. It was meant to be a shock. The phrase rang empty now, but I can't access it. The lock's been replaced. Harold rubbed his chin, assessing me with the keen scrutiny of a person who'd honed reading folks over years. Replaced? When did you last speak with your daughter? 2 weeks back, perhaps 3. The confession burned. I've been dialing, but she's not responding. Her spouse isn't either. Haven't spotted her in this building for... Harold hesitated, tallying. Has to be 2 weeks now, maybe more. My gut sank. What do you mean you haven't spotted her? Exactly that. Used to notice her heading out and in. Job, errands, stuff like that. Pleasant woman. Always greeted me. But recently he shook his head. Zilch. But Nelson's been around, correct? Her husband. Harold's face changed, turning uneasy. He grabbed his trash sack again, dodging my gaze. Well, sure, I see him often. Good. Then perhaps he can clarify. Different lady every couple of days, though. The statement struck like icy water. What? Your daughter's husband, Nelson? Harold met my eyes now, his tone softer. He's been escorting women over. Young ones, all dressed up fancy. Assumed maybe your daughter had left and he was, well, you get it. I retreated, my shoulder bumping the wall. There has to be an error. I wish there were. Harold fidgeted awkwardly. Look, I hate spreading rumors, but I've resided here 8 years. I know what I've observed. What precisely have you observed? Different lady Tuesday evening, blonde in one of those pricey overcoats. Wednesday, a redhead in a brief skirt. Too brief for this chill, in my opinion. Yesterday, some brunette with bling that sparkled from afar. My fists tightened. Are you certain it's Nelson? Same fellow. Same key to the unit. Chuckling boisterously in the hall. Tunes blasting late. Not like when your daughter was present. She was subdued, polite. The corridor began to whirl a bit. I pressed my hand to the wall for balance. How long has this continued? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Around the period I stopped seeing Mimi. Harold's words bore the gravity of bearing ill tidings. I kept figuring I should stay out of it. But if you're her dad, I need to locate her. Any clue where she could be? I shook my head. My thoughts raced, attempting to digest what Harold had revealed. Nelson, my son-in-law for 5 years, ushering other women into Mimi's home. Various women, several women, while my daughter was where? Look, Harold stated, lifting his trash sack once more. I need to haul this down before collection, but if you require anything, an extra set of eyes, someone to inquire around the area, I'm typically in. Thanks. My voice echoed far away, even to myself. Harold descended the stairs, then stopped. Your daughter? She appeared content when I saw her, always grinning, chatting about her job. Whatever occurred, it wasn't due to unhappiness here. His steps diminished down the stairwell, leaving me solitary with this devastating revelation. Nelson wasn't merely unreachable. He was outright betraying my daughter. But where was Mimi? If she'd departed willingly, she would have informed me. She would have gathered her belongings, updated her contact properly, provided some rationale unless she was unable. I gazed at Mimi's door anew, viewing it afresh. Not merely altered locks, but a blockade. Something barring me, shielding the reality about what befell my little girl. My phone resembled a stone in my pocket. Nelson's digits, Mimi's digits. Neither would aid now. But there must be another approach. There had to be a way to track her that didn't hinge on her husband's truthfulness or assistance. Think, Amos. What resources do you possess that they can't manipulate? My limbs felt shaky as I traced Harold's route down the stairs. The cement steps appeared steeper now, the steel banister chillier beneath my hand. I required fresh air, room to ponder, someplace distant from that door and its awful suggestions. Outside, the afternoon had turned chillier. A cloudy sky loomed over the Brooklyn Road, echoing my disposition. I spotted a tiny cement seat by the building's entry and sank onto it, my duffel bag striking the ground with a muted thump. Different ladies every few days. The words reverberated in my skull while Mimi was absent, vanished, disappeared without a sign or justification. I extracted my phone, peering at the compact display. These modern smartphones. Mimi had pushed me to switch from my ancient flip model during her final trip to Pennsylvania. Dad, what if an emergency strikes one of us? What if we must locate each other? I'd objected. I don't need to monitor you like a suspect. Honey, it's not monitoring, it's security. Just install this app. Find my family, please. She'd flashed those eyes, the identical ones she'd employed to persuade me to allow her a pup at age 12. So, I'd yielded, observing her poke and glide through options I didn't grasp, inputting codes and approvals. She demonstrated its use once, but that was half a year prior. Now striving to recall which symbol amid scores could be it. I sensed every bit of my 65 years. My bifocals. I rummaged through my duffel, shoving aside pressed shirts and pill containers until I located the holder. The scene clarified, unveiling app symbols I'd overlooked. Games Mimi had added for dull moments. Newsfeeds, forecasts, snapshot tool. Where was it? Find my family. Was it Azure, Emerald? They all blended together for me. There, a modest icon with 2 silhouettes and a map marker. I pressed it, my broad fingers awkward on the sleek surface. Loading wheel rotating forever. Come on, password needed. I attempted my birth date, then Mimi's, then my departed wife's birth name. Wrong, wrong, wrong. What had I chosen? Think, Amos. Naturally, my birth date plus her high school graduation year. She'd had me jot it down. The device approved it, and abruptly a map covered the screen. Crimson points emerged sequentially. My spot displayed as a throbbing azure ring in Brooklyn. Another point surfaced further uptown. That had to be Mimi's, but it wasn't at her residence. The crimson point rested solidly in Manhattan amid a group of tall structures I didn't know. I tapped it and words popped up. Mimi's iPhone. Mount Sinai Hospital. Hospital. The device almost escaped my grasp. I clutched it firmer, fixating on those terms until they seared into my sight. Mount Sinai Hospital. My daughter was in a hospital, and I had no idea why. Didn't know the duration she'd been there. Didn't even know if she was. I rose suddenly, my duffel tumbling to the pavement. Hospital, that accounted for it all. The ignored calls, the vacancy from her home, even why Nelson might have swapped the locks. But it accounted for zilch about the women Harold had witnessed. Unless Nelson figured I wouldn't discover. Unless he was exploiting Mimi's ailment, and it must be an ailment. What else would confine her to a hospital for weeks? As a chance to... My hands trembled as I stooped to grab my bag. The bustling avenue seemed noisier now. Vehicle horns and alarms merging into city turmoil that mirrored the din in my mind. I had to reach her. Had to witness firsthand what was occurring to my daughter. A yellow cab inched by in the flow. I ventured into the road, flailing my arm desperately. It didn't halt. Another passed, taken. A third didn't even decelerate. Please, I muttered to nobody, advancing further into the lanes. Please stop. A cab eventually veered over, tires screeching faintly. The driver, a lady in her 40s with weary eyes, lowered her window. Where to? Mount Sinai Hospital. I slid into the rear, instantly assailed by the scent of vinyl and scent diffuser. Please rush. Emergency, my daughter. The phrases emerged, choked. I believe I must see my daughter. She nodded and merged back into the stream. Through the glass, Brooklyn smeared by. Residences, shops, folks enjoying regular Friday afternoons. While my existence fractured, the app remained active on my phone. That crimson point fixed and immobile at Mount Sinai. How long had Mimi been there? What affliction demanded weeks of hospital stay? And why hadn't anybody informed me? Unless Nelson had assured the staff he was managing kin alerts. Unless he intentionally left me unaware while he paraded other women through her home, exploiting her absence for his own ends. The cab sped through an amber signal, propelling me toward revelations I wasn't certain I desired. Traffic slogged through Manhattan's veins. I perched in the taxi's back, clutching my phone so fiercely my knuckles blanched. The crimson point on my display stayed put. Mimi was still at Mount Sinai, still in that facility, still requiring me as I inched through Friday midday congestion. Work on the FDR, the driver noted, meeting my gaze in the mirror. She was around 45 with compassionate eyes and creases that hinted she'd handled many upset riders. I can try the bridge path, might be quicker. Whatever speeds us there. Mount Sinai Hospital. The title looped in my thoughts like a faulty tape. Why was my daughter in a hospital? How extended her stay? The locator app indicated her position, but it couldn't reveal if she was seeing another undergoing standard checks or no. I shoved aside the bleaker options. Mimi was youthful, fit. She ran in Prospect Park, consumed natural produce, swallowed those nutrient pills her mom used to tease. She couldn't be gravely sick, but Harold's statement resounded. Haven't seen her around for 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a hospital wasn't ordinary anything. I attempted ringing her again. Same mechanical notice. Subscriber unavailable. Her phone was either drained or deactivated. Nelson's line skipped straight to voicemail once more. The guy was purposefully evading me. My own device's power dipped to 23%. I'd been monitoring the GPS compulsively, observing our sluggish advance across the metropolis. At this pace, it'd take another 20 minutes to arrive. The cab jolted ahead through a crossing, then halted again behind a chain of taillights. An emergency vehicle siren blared by us, its scarlet and sapphire flashes coloring our interior with pressing hues. My chest constricted. Viewing it vanish toward the identical health zone where my daughter awaited. 3 years prior, I'd undertaken a similar frantic trek. Different facility, different town, but the identical oppressive dread in my chest. Martha had been in stage 4 when we got the verdict at last. Pancreatic cancer. The physician had stated with that rehearsed empathy they learn in training. We detected it too tardily. I'd clasped her hand through chemo rounds, radiation sessions, and ultimately end-of-life care. I'd vowed to her I'd look after Mimi, shield our daughter from the sort of agony we endured. Now here I was, dashing through jams because I might be breaching that vow. Family crisis? The driver queried softly. My daughter? The words emerged raspy. She's in the hospital and I had no clue. These situations arise suddenly at times. She gunned through a yellow, snagging vital moments. My sibling got a diabetes diagnosis last year. No one knew till she fainted on the job. Sometimes folks conceal things to safeguard their loved ones. That resembled Mimi. She'd hidden her university money woes until 3 months overdue on payments. She concealed her initial troubles with Nelson until post-wedding. She always aimed to manage everything solo, just like her mom. The Manhattan horizon altered around us as we wove through back roads. Health facilities started popping up more often. Walk-in clinics, expert practices, drugstore outlets. We were nearing the medical area. My phone buzzed and I almost fumbled it in my rush to pick up. Unknown caller. Hello? Mimi? Wrong number. Apologies. I shut my eyes and reclined against the battered vinyl seat. Every chime, every alert spiked my pulse with equal parts hope and horror. She's going to be fine, the driver asserted strongly. Whatever the issue, having kin there changes everything. You're doing what's right. Through the pain, I could spot the vast setup of Mount Sinai Hospital nearing. Towering glass structures packed with windows overlooking countless private sorrows and triumphs daily. Somewhere in that labyrinth of chambers and passages, my daughter was waiting, unaware of my approach. The cab rolled up to the primary entry, merging with a queue of cars unloading patients and guests. Folks streamed through the automatic doors, some rushing, some ambling, all bearing their tales of concern and optimism. $28.50, the driver announced. But when I offered $40, she waved it off. Keep it, dear. Go locate your daughter. I snatched my duffel and stepped onto the walkway, gazing up at the formidable health complex. My phone indicated 3:40 p.m. Wherever Mimi was in that edifice, I was on the verge of uncovering why she'd been concealed there for 2 weeks. The sliding doors parted with a gentle hiss, ushering me into whatever reality lurked within. The entrance hall assaulted my senses at once. Polished stone floors that amplified every stride, the acrid tang of sanitizer in the atmosphere and harsh lighting that rendered everyone ghostly and tense. Help counters lined the distant wall, manned by folks in uniforms who'd evidently been fielding anxious inquiries all shift. I neared the closest counter, my duffel abruptly weighing more with each pace. I'm seeking my daughter, Mimi Nelson. I think she's admitted here. The lady at the desk, perhaps 30 with fatigued eyes, began keying. Are you listed as her emergency contact, sir? I'm her dad, Amos Cox. More keying. A hesitation. Then her face eased into something akin to solace. Room 314, third level. Use the lifts on your right. I'll notify them you're heading up. Room 314, third level. The figures weighed on my thoughts as I proceeded to the elevator area. Fellow visitors stood by. A lady gripping a flower arrangement. An older gent with a mobility aid. A youthful pair clasping hands so firmly their joints paled. The lift ascended gradually, levels illuminating one after another. Second level, standard care. Third level, my stop. The doors parted with a mild chime. The third level seemed distinct from the lively entrance. Hushed, more grave. A plaque on the wall stated oncology ward with an arrow directing along a hallway bordered by chambers. Oncology, cancer. My knees almost buckled. I clutched the wall for steadiness. My duffel slipping to the ground. Cancer, that's why Mimi was here. That's why she hadn't responded to calls. That's why Nelson had been escorting other women to her home while she battled for survival in this clean corridor. Sir, you okay? A lady in a lab coat had materialized next to me. Mid-40s, warm features with sharp eyes behind thin frames. Her tag read Dr. Elena Ramirez. Oncology. I'm searching for my daughter, Mimi Nelson. Room 314. You must be Mr. Cox. Her tone held the soft command of one accustomed to conveying tough updates. I'm Dr. Ramirez, her oncologist. Could we speak confidentially for a bit? She guided me to a modest meeting room nearby. Basic seats, a tissue container on the surface, health credentials on the partitions, the sort of space built for talks no one desires. How much are you aware of your daughter's state? Dr. Ramirez inquired as we settled. 0. The term emerged like an admission. I just discovered she's in the hospital. What's the matter with her? Dr. Ramirez accessed a health dossier, her actions measured and precise. Mimi was identified with pancreatic cancer 6 weeks ago. Stage 4, meaning it's spread to additional areas. She's been inpatient for 2 weeks for symptom control and comfort measures. The space skewed. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4, the identical illness that claimed Martha. The same phrases I'd heard 3 years back presented with the same expert empathy. That can't be accurate. My voice echoed remote as if from another. She's just 35, she's fit. She works out. Cancer doesn't pick based on years or habits, Mr. Cox, I'm sorry. What's the outlook? I knew already, but I needed to voice it. With intensive therapy, we could prolong her time by a few months. Without it, she paused, selecting her phrasing thoughtfully. Weeks to months based on her reaction to comfort care. The space was twirling now. I seized the chair's arms, attempting to ground myself to something firm. Why wasn't I notified? I'm her dad. I should have been informed right away. The urgent contact details we hold are for her spouse, Nelson Hargrove. We've tried reaching him repeatedly, but no reply. Naturally, Nelson was aware. Nelson had known for 6 weeks his wife was terminal, and rather than alerting her kin, rather than supporting her here, he'd been flaunting other women through her home as if she were already departed. Where is he currently? My voice emerged harsher than planned. I can't share details on other relatives, but I can say Mimi has been basically by herself through this trial. The care team has been quite worried about her absence of family presence. Alone. My daughter had been confronting the same ailment that took her mom in the same type of barren hospital space, and she'd been managing it solo because her husband was spineless, and her father was too complacent to visit more frequently. May I see her? Certainly, but Mr. Cox, Dr. Ramirez inclined forward a tad. The bodily alterations can be shocking. The disease has advanced quickly, and the interventions, even supportive ones, exact a price. She's far slimmer than 6 weeks prior, and she fatigues quickly. I nodded, distrusting my words. Martha had endured the same shift. My lively, lovely wife slowly vanishing before me until only her essence lingered. Strong and affectionate to the last. She doesn't know you're arriving, does she? Now this was intended as a surprise drop-in. Dr. Ramirez rose, sealing the dossier. She's been inquiring about you, pondering why you haven't reached out. She insisted I not contact you since she didn't want you fretting after losing your spouse to cancer. The remorse struck like a tangible hit while I'd been pursuing my routine existence in Pennsylvania, perusing the paper, tending my yard, viewing shows. My daughter had been shielding me from the facts even as she struggled for her existence. Room 314 is right along the hall, Dr. Ramirez murmured. Want me to join you? Dr. Ramirez tapped lightly on the door of room 314. Mimi, you have a guest. I'm not up for guests today, came a response from within, feebler than I recalled, but clearly my daughter's. I think you'll make an exception for this one, the doctor replied, easing the door open a bit. Your dad is here. Quiet, then a quick gasp. I entered the room and the view almost shattered me. Mimi was elevated in the hospital bed, her formerly round face now hollow, her ebony locks sparse and fragile from therapies. Tubes trailed from her limbs to devices that hummed quietly in the setting. But her eyes, Martha's eyes, remained vivid and sharp. Dad, her tone broke with incredulity. What are you doing here? Surprising my girl, I replied, though my tone was scarcely steadier than hers. That was the idea anyway. She tried to sit up straighter, wincing slightly at the movement. You can't be here. I mean, it's wonderful that you're here, but you weren't supposed to find out like this. I set my travel bag down and crossed to her bedside. The afternoon light from the window made the medical equipment seem less intimidating, but it couldn't hide how small she looked in the hospital bed. Dr. Ramirez tells me you've been here for 2 weeks. It's not as bad as it looks, she said quickly. The same tone she'd used as a child when trying to convince me a scraped knee didn't hurt. They're just managing my pain levels, making sure I'm comfortable. I reached out and touched her cheek gently. Her skin felt paper-thin, hot from fever or medication. Honey, why didn't you tell me? Tears started forming in her eyes. Because I watched what Mom's cancer did to you. I saw how it destroyed you to watch her suffer. I couldn't put you through that again. That wasn't your choice to make. I pulled the visitor's chair closer to her bed and sat down heavily. I'm your father. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. But you just lost Mom 3 years ago. You're finally starting to seem like yourself again. I didn't want to stop. I took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV port. I lost your mother. Yes, but you're my daughter. You're all I have left of her. All I have left of the life we built together. Did you really think I'd want to spend whatever time we have left apart? She squeezed my hand weakly. I was scared you'd try to take over, make all the medical decisions, turn it into some kind of battle like you did with Mom. The words stung because they held truth. I had fought Martha's cancer like it was a problem I could solve through sheer determination and research. I dragged her to specialist after specialist, pushed for experimental treatments, refused to accept the inevitable until the very end. I learned some things from that experience, I said quietly. This is your fight, your choices. I'm just here to support whatever decisions you make, really? She studied my face, searching for the stubborn man who'd once argued with oncologists and demanded second opinions.
Really? But I am going to ask Oni a question, and I want an honest answer.
She nodded. Where is your husband? Her expression shifted, pain flickering across her features that had nothing to do with cancer. Nelson, he's having a hard time with all this. What does that mean? When we got the diagnosis, he said he needed some space to process it. He's been staying at his brother's place in Queens. She looked away from me, focusing on the IV drip bag. He says he'll come back when he's ready to handle this. Ready to handle watching his wife die. Ready to handle being a husband when it became difficult. My hands clenched into fists in my lap. How long since you've seen him? 2 weeks since I was admitted. Her voice got smaller. He calls sometimes. Asks how I'm feeling. Tells me about his work stress, but he hasn't visited. I thought about Harold's revelation. Different women every few days laughing in the hallway. Music playing late. While I lay alone in this hospital bed, believing her husband was grieving at his brother's house, Nelson was using her apartment as his personal entertainment center. Dad, you have that look. What look? The same one you got when Mom's insurance company tried to deny coverage for her treatments. Like you're planning something. I forced my expression to relax. I'm just thinking about logistics. How long do the doctors expect you to be here? Probably another week, maybe 2. Depends on how well they can manage the pain with oral medications. And then what? You can't go back to that apartment alone. I'll be okay. Nelson says he'll be ready to come back by then. I doubted that very much. Nelson had shown his true character when his wife needed him most. But I couldn't tell my about the women Harold had seen. Not while she was fighting for her life. Not while she still held on to hope that her marriage meant something. What if you came home with me? Pennsylvania isn't that far, and you could have your old room back. I could take care of you properly. Dad, your house has stairs to every bedroom and the nearest hospital is 40 minutes away. She smiled sadly. I need to be close to my medical team. A nurse appeared in the doorway, checking her watch. I'm sorry, but we need to do some blood work and medication adjustments. Could you give us about 30 minutes? I looked at my reluctant to leave her alone again. Go get some coffee, she said. There's a decent cafeteria on the first floor. Come back in an hour and we can figure out where you're staying, how long you can visit. I stood up slowly, my back protesting from the emotional weight of the last few hours. I'm not going anywhere, honey. I'm staying in the city as long as you need me. Promise, promise? I leaned down and kissed her forehead. Your old man isn't running away when things get tough. As I gathered my travel bag and headed for the door, he was already making different promises in my mind. Promises about Nelson Hargrove and what happened to men who abandoned their wives. When life became difficult, the medical team filed into my room with practice deficiency, wheeling equipment I didn't recognize. Dr. Ramirez gave me gentle but firm look, the kind that said family members needed to step aside and let professionals work. We'll need about an hour for the procedures, she explained quietly. There's a family waiting area down the hall, or you could grab coffee in the cafeteria. I nodded and gathered my travel bag, but every instinct screamed against leaving Mai alone. She'd been abandoned by the one person who'd promised to stay by her side in sickness and health. I wouldn't add to that betrayal, not even temporarily. I'll be right outside, I told her through the closing door. Walking down the oncology corridor, I pulled out my phone and dialed Nelson's number again, straight to voicemail just like the previous 4 attempts. This time I left a different kind of message. Nelson, this is Amos. I'm at Mount C with your wife. She's been here 2 weeks fighting cancer while you... Well, I know where you've been. Call me back. 20 seconds later, I tried again from the hospital's main line, thinking maybe he'd blocked my number. Still no answer, but this time, the phone rang once before cutting to voicemail. He was screening calls. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The initial shock of my condition had crystallized into something colder, more focused. 40 years of engineering had taught me to approach problems systematically, and Nelson Harrove had become a problem requiring a solution. I remembered Jake Morrison's number from my phone contacts, an old friend from my consulting days who'd moved into private investigations after retiring from corporate security. I hadn't spoken to Jake in months, but some friendships survive long gaps. Amos, this is unexpected. How are you holding up? Not well, Jake. I need a favor, and I need it quietly. A pause. Jake had always been good at reading between lines. What kind of favor? Information gathering. I'll pay your usual rate. You know, money isn't an issue between us. What's going on? I explained about my condition, Nelson's abandonment, the change locks, Harold's revelations about other women. Jake listened without interrupting. Another reason I'd always respected him. Where is he now? Jake asked when I finished. That's what I need to find out soon. I can make some calls, run some traces. Give me an hour. Thanks, Jake. And Jake, this stays between us for now. After hanging up, I found myself in the family waiting area, surrounded by other people dealing with medical crisis. The difference was obvious. They had support systems, spouses holding hands, adult children taking turns at bedsides, friends bringing coffee and flowers, mime finally, and a husband who couldn't be bothered to answer his phone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Happy birthday to me. Skyline Lounge is amazing. Wrong number probably, but something nagged at me. I opened my Instagram through her old account she'd set up on my phone months ago. Another technology lesson I'd initially resisted. Social media felt invasive, but now it might be useful. Nelson's profile appeared in her followers list. His latest stories were posted 30 minutes ago. Champagne glasses clinking, a rooftop view of Manhattan, a group of people laughing around a decorated table. The location tag read, Skyline Lounge Midtown, birthday celebration. While his wife underwent cancer treatment, Nelson was throwing himself a party. I screenshot everything, my engineer's mind automatically documenting evidence. The timestamps, the locations, the faces of people who clearly weren't mourning anyone's illness. Young women in cocktail dresses, men in expensive suits, everyone looking like they were having the time of their lives. Jake called back sooner than expected. Found him. Your son-in-law's credit card activity shows charges at Skyline Lounge starting at $401. High-end rooftop bar in Midtown. Expensive place. He's dropped over $3,000 tonight. $3,000 while my worried about insurance copays and prescription costs. Amos, what are you planning? Because your voice has that tone Martha used to worry about. The one that meant you were about to do something irreversible. Martha, she'd have known exactly what I was thinking right now. She'd also have tried to talk me out of it, then helped me plan it properly when she realized my mind was made up. I'm going to have a conversation with Nelson at a party in public. That could get messy fast. Good. Messy means witnesses. Messy means consequences. Amos, he abandoned his dying wife to throw himself a birthday party. Jake with other women using money that should go toward her medical bills. What kind of conversation do you think that deserves? A long pause. The kind where you need backup just in case. Can be there in 40 minutes. No, this is between me and him. But thanks. Then at least promise me you won't do anything that lands you in jail. My need's her father, not her father's lawyer. He was right about that. Whatever I did had to be calculated, controlled, justice, not revenge. though the line between them felt increasingly thin. I checked the time, 6:30 p.m. The medical procedures would finish by 7:30, giving me time for one quick trip to Midtown and back. Skyline Lounge was 20 minutes by subway from the hospital. Standing up from the waiting area chair, I felt different than I had an hour ago. The grief was still there, the fear for my future, the anger at the unfairness of it all. But underneath those emotions was something harder and more useful. Purpose. Nelson thought he could abandon his responsibilities while his wife fought for her life. He was about to learn differently. The subway ride to Midtown gave me time to dig deeper into Nelson's social media trail. Each new post painted a clearer picture of betrayal that went beyond simple absence. This wasn't a man struggling to cope with his wife's illness. This was a man celebrating his freedom from her. His Instagram stories showed a timeline of calculated cruelty. At 4 p.m., when Dr. Ramirez had been explaining my treatment options to me, Nelson was posing with a magnum of champagne. At 5:30, while I'd been holding my daughter's thin hand, he'd been photographed with his arm around a blonde woman young enough to be his daughter. But it was the videos that really showed his character. In one film just an hour ago, Nelson raised a glass to the camera and said, "To freedom, to new beginnings, and to finally living my best life." The audio was clear, his words unmistakable, his joy genuine. While his wife fought cancer alone in a hospital bed, I saved every piece of evidence to my phone, my engineering background automatically organizing files and timestamps. If this ever went legal, I wanted documentation, but more immediately, I wanted ammunition. My phone rang as the subway pulled into Times Square station. "Jake, again, I did some more digging. Your son-in-law has been planning this party for 3 weeks, reserved the venue, hired a photographer, sent invitations through social media. This isn't spontaneous, it's premeditated. 3 weeks right around the time was admitted to the hospital. While she was being told her cancer had metastasized, Nelson was booking party venues. There's more," Jake continued. His credit card records show a pattern. High-end restaurants, expensive clothing purchases, jewelry that sure isn't going to his wife. This has been going on since her diagnosis. Since her diagnosis? 6 weeks of treating my terminal illness as his personal liberation. "Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer." "Shoot. If this was your daughter, what would you do?" A long pause. "Probably something that would disappoint my better angels but satisfy my father's heart. Which is exactly why I think you should wait. Think this through." "I have thought it through. He's not just abandoning her. He's celebrating it while she's dying." "And what's your plan? Storm into his party and do what exactly?" I emerged from the subway into the chaos of Midtown Manhattan. Neon signs blazed around me. Crowds of people heading to dinner reservations and weekend entertainment. The city that never sleeps, full of people living their lives while mine fell apart. "I'm going to give him some news," I said. "Bad news." "Amos, thanks for the help, Jake. I'll call you later." I hung up before he could argue further. This wasn't about reason anymore. This was about justice, and justice sometimes required public embarrassment for private cruelties. Skyline Lounge occupied the roof of a glass building in the heart of Midtown. Through the windows, I could see people in expensive clothes holding expensive drinks, celebrating whatever rich people celebrated on Friday nights. Music pulsed from the upper floors, and I could make out laughter even from the street. The elevator to the roof required a key card, but the security guard was more helpful than I'd expected. "Family emergency," I explained, showing him my driver's license. "I need to reach my son-in-law, Nelson Hargrove. There's been a medical crisis." The guard looked at my tired face, my rumpled traveling clothes, my obvious distress, and made a human decision. "Rooftop level, but sir, try to keep it discreet. This is an upscale establishment. I'll do my best." The elevator rose 30 floors while I composed myself through the glass walls. Manhattan spread out below like a circuit board of lights and possibilities. Somewhere in this maze of buildings, my daughter lay in a hospital bed, alone except for nurses and machines. Somewhere above me, her husband celebrated his freedom from her suffering. The elevator doors opened onto a rooftop paradise. Skyline Lounge lived up to its name. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Manhattan skyline in all directions, while an outdoor deck offered fresh air and stunning views. Well-dressed people clustered around high-top tables. A DJ provided background music and servers circulated with champagne and appetizers. It took me less than 30 seconds to spot Nelson. He'd gained weight since the last family gathering, his face full and satisfied, his expensive suit tailored to his new prosperity. He stood near the outdoor deck, holding court with a group of admirers. 3 young women and 2 men his age, all hanging on his every word. As I watched, he threw his head back and laughed at something someone said. Pure, genuine enjoyment. The laugh of a man without a care in the world. I started walking toward him, my steps steady and purposeful. The crowd parted automatically. Maybe it was my age, maybe my expression, maybe the way I moved with complete focus through their casual celebration. People noticed me, then looked toward Nelson to see what was about to happen. He saw me when I was still 10 FT away. The laughter died in his throat, color drained from his face, and his champagne glass trembled in his hand. He looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route, but his friends had formed a semicircle that trapped him against the deck railing. "Hello, Nelson," my voice carried clearly over the music. Several nearby conversations stopped, people sensing drama about to unfold. "Amos, what are you doing here?" "How did you find me? Your wife told me you were having a difficult time processing her illness, that you needed space to handle the emotional burden of her cancer diagnosis." I spoke loudly enough for his friends to hear every word. Imagine my surprise to discover this is how you handle emotional burdens. One of the young women looked confused. "Cancer, Nelson, you never mentioned. It's complicated." Nelson stammered, his eyes darting between me and his audience. "Family medical issues, very private. Not something you discuss at social events. Private." I stepped closer and Nelson actually backed up against the railing. "Your wife has been in the hospital for 2 weeks, Nelson. Terminal pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. She's been asking about you, wondering why you haven't visited." The second woman put down her drink. The man exchanged uncomfortable glances. The party atmosphere around us had shifted to awkward tension. "While she's been undergoing treatment, fighting for her life. You've been here spending thousands of dollars celebrating your freedom. I have the pictures, Nelson. The credit card records, the social media posts about your new beginning. You don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly." My voice was calm, controlled, but it cut through his protestations like a blade. "You abandoned your dying wife to throw yourself a birthday party with other women, using money that should pay for her treatment." The silence around us was complete now. Even the music seemed quieter. Nelson's friends were staring at him with expressions ranging from disgust to horror. "I came here to give you some news, Nelson. Bad news, I'm afraid. In 1 hour, something very unpleasant is going to happen to you. I won't tell you what, but I guarantee you won't enjoy it." "What do you mean, Amos? What are you talking about?" But I was already walking away. My message delivered, my purpose served. Behind me I heard Nelson calling my name, heard his friends asking questions he couldn't answer, heard the party's energy collapse into uncomfortable whispers. The elevator doors closed on Nelson's panicked face, his birthday celebration in ruins around him. 1 hour, I told him. Now the clock was ticking. The elevator descended through the glass building while Manhattan sparkled outside like scattered diamonds. I checked my watch. 8:45 p.m. The medical procedures at the hospital would be finished by now, and Mai would be wondering where I'd gone. But first I had one more stop to make. During the subway ride back to the hospital, my phone buzzed with increasingly frantic calls from Nelson. I let them all go to voicemail. Each unanswered ring was part of the punishment. Uncertainty, fear, the growing realization that his comfortable world was about to change. By the time I reached Mount C, Nelson had left 6 voicemails. I listened to them in the hospital lobby, watching his panic escalate with each message. "Amos, please call me back. We need to talk about this misunderstanding. Look, I know how this looks, but you don't understand the full situation." Mai agreed. "This is harassment. You can't threaten people and walk away. I'm calling the police. Amos, please. Whatever you're planning, we can work this out. I'll do whatever you want. I'm begging you. Please don't destroy my life over this." The progression from arrogance to desperation was exactly what I'd hoped for. Nelson had spent 6 weeks thinking he could abandon his responsibilities without consequences. Now he was learning differently. Dr. Ramirez met me outside my room. The procedures went well. Her pain level should be more manageable now. "She's been asking for you. How is she?" "Tired. But the medications are helping. You can see her now, but try to keep the visit calm. She needs rest." I entered room 314 to find Mai looking smaller than before, if that was possible. The medical procedures had exhausted her, but her eyes still held that fierce intelligence I remembered from her childhood. "Where did you go?" she asked weakly. The nurse said you stepped out, but you were gone for hours. I had some errands to run. Nothing important. Lee came easily. Protecting her from the truth about Nelson's party would spare her additional pain. Dad, I know you're angry about Nelson not being here, but please don't do anything dramatic. I can't handle family drama on top of everything else. If only she knew what family drama really looked like. But that was exactly why I'd handled this quietly. I deserved to focus on fighting cancer, not on mourning her marriage. My phone rang. Nelson again. This time I answered. Amos, thank you for picking up. Please, we need to meet and discuss. The hour isn't up yet, Nelson. I kept my voice calm, controlled. When it is, you'll know. What are you talking about? What's going to happen in an hour? Something you won't enjoy. I guarantee it. I hung up. I was watching me with concern. Dad, what was that about? Nothing you need to worry about, honey. Just some business I need to handle. But even as I said it, I was checking the time. 9:20 p.m., 40 minutes since I'd left the party. 20 minutes until Nelson's deadline. My phone rang again immediately. This time, instead of answering, I turned it off completely. Nelson could spend the next 20 minutes in growing panic, wondering what consequences were coming for him. The uncertainty would be worse than any actual punishment I could devise. You look different, I said quietly. Calmer somehow, more like yourself. She was right. The helpless grief I'd felt earlier had transformed into something more productive. I'd taken action, imposed consequences, restored some balance to a situation that had been grossly unfair. For the first time since arriving in New York, I felt like I was protecting my daughter properly. I'm just glad I'm here with you now. Will you stay tonight? I know the hospital has visitor accommodations. Of course, I'm not going anywhere. As we talked about treatment options and next steps, part of my mind tracked the remaining time. 15 minutes until Nelson's deadline. By now, he'd probably tried calling the hospital directly. Maybe even attempted to come here himself. But I'd spoken to security about limiting his access. Family emergency protocols gave me temporary authority over visitors. At 9:50 p.m., I excused myself to use the restroom and turned my phone back on. 23 missed calls from Nelson and a dozen text messages, ranging from angry demands to desperate pleas. The final message sent just 5 minutes ago read, "Please, Amos, I'll do anything. I'll pay for all of my treatment. I'll give her everything in the divorce. Just tell me what you want." Divorce? Interesting. Nelson was already planning his exit strategy, thinking he could buy his way out of responsibility with financial settlements. But some things couldn't be purchased or negotiated. At exactly 10 p.m., I called him back. Amos, thank you for calling. Look, I've been thinking about everything you said, and you're absolutely right. I've handled this situation poorly, but I can fix it. I can make amends. The hour's up, Nelson. What? What does that mean? What's going to happen? I looked around the hospital corridor. The quiet efficiency of the night shift. The families maintaining vigil over their loved ones. The basic human decency of people caring for each other during crisis. Nothing is going to happen, Nelson. That was the point. I don't understand. For the last hour, you've experienced what your wife has felt for 6 weeks. Uncertainty, fear, abandonment by someone who should be there for you. The difference is your hour of anxiety is over. Hers isn't. Silence on the other end of the line. You want to know what's going to happen to you? You're going to live with the knowledge that when your wife needed you most, you abandoned her for a party. You're going to remember that when she was fighting for her life, you were celebrating your freedom, and everyone at that party tonight is going to remember it too. Amos, please. I'm hanging up now. Don't call again. Don't come to the hospital. Don't contact Mai unless she specifically asks for you. And Nelson, if I hear you're using Heraldness as an excuse for anything, if you're telling people you're grieving or struggling or any other lie to cover your selfishness, I will make sure everyone knows the truth about your birthday party. I ended the call and turned the phone off again. Through the hospital window, I could see the lights of Manhattan stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere in that maze of buildings, Nelson was probably sitting alone, finally understanding that actions had consequences. But here, in this sterile corridor outside my daughter's room, justice felt more like exhaustion than satisfaction. The real work helping my fight cancer was just beginning. Manhattan's neon glow painted the sidewalks in shifting colors as I walked away from Skyline Lounge. The confrontation had left me feeling oddly calm. Not the explosive satisfaction I might have expected, but something steadier. Justice in motion, consequences finally matching actions. My phone showed 9:05 p.m. Hospital visiting hours extended until 10 p.m. for family members, giving me time for one essential stop. Mai would need proper nutrition during her recovery, and the hospital cafeteria wasn't adequate for someone fighting cancer. The Whole Foods near. The medical district stayed open late, catering to hospital staff and worried families. Inside, fluorescent lighting felt harsh after the upscale ambiance of the rooftop bar, but it was honest light. No pretense, no performance, just people buying what they needed to take care of each other. I selected carefully organic fruits that wouldn't upset my sensitive stomach, fresh ginger for nausea, the kind of Greek yogurt she'd loved as a child. Simple things that might remind her body how to be healthy again. Shopping for someone recovering? The cashier asked. She was maybe 25 with kind eyes that suggested she'd seen plenty of worried families. My daughter cancer treatment, I'm sorry. Is she doing better? Getting there. The words felt true as I said them. Mai was getting better, not just medically but in ways that mattered more. She wasn't alone anymore, wasn't protecting everyone else from her truth. These are good choices, she said, scanning the ginger. My aunt swore by fresh ginger tea during her chemo. The receipt showed 9:23 p.m., enough time to reach the hospital before visiting hours ended. In the taxi back to Mount Si, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivery scheduled for 10:15 p.m. Address confirmed. SM Agent Sarah Martinez, Martha's former partner at the FBI, now heading the financial crimes unit. She'd been more than willing to help when I'd explained Nelson's situation, especially after seeing the evidence Jake had gathered about offshore accounts and tax evasion. The hospital lobby felt different at night, quieter, more intimate somehow. Families gathered in waiting areas, some sleeping in uncomfortable chairs, others maintaining vigil with coffee and quiet conversation. People who understood that love meant showing up when life got difficult. Room 314 glowed softly with evening light. Mai looked better than she had this morning. The medical procedures had helped, and her color was improving slightly. She was awake, reading something on her tablet, looking almost like herself again. You brought groceries? She smiled at the bag in my hands. Dad, the hospital feeds me. You don't need to shop. Hospital food isn't going to help you get strong enough to fight this thing. I started unpacking items, arranging them on her bedside table like a small altar to her recovery. Besides, I remembered how much you loved this yogurt when you were little. Greek God's brand. Her voice carried genuine pleasure. I haven't had this in years. Sometimes the old things are the best things. She studied my face with that perceptive look she'd inherited from her mother. You seem different tonight, calmer, somehow less frantic. I had some business to take care of. It went well. What kind of business? My phone vibrated again, another text. Target acquired. Timeline confirmed. Proceeding as planned. Nothing you need to worry about, I said, silencing the phone. Just some loose ends that needed handling. But Mai wasn't fooled. She'd always been able to read me better than I'd liked, even as a child. Dad, what did you do about Nelson? What makes you think I did anything? Because you're you. Because when someone hurts your family, you fix it. Because you disappeared for 3 hours this evening and came back looking like justice had been served. Smart girl. Too smart for her own good sometimes. I had a conversation with your husband. He won't be bothering you anymore. What kind of conversation? The kind where he learned that actions have consequences. The kind where he discovered that abandoning his wife has a price. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. Outside her window, Manhattan continued its endless pulse of life and ambition. Somewhere in that maze of lights, Nelson was probably trying to call me again. Still not understanding that his hour of reckoning had only just begun. I should probably be upset that you confronted him, Mai said finally. But I'm not. I'm tired of protecting people who don't protect me back. You don't need to protect anyone anymore, honey. That's my job now. My phone buzzed a third time. I glanced at it quickly. Warrant executed, evidence secured. Full report follows. Excellent work. Agent Martinez Wasthero. She'd waited until she had everything she needed before moving. Nelson's evening was about to get much worse than a ruined party. Dad. My voice was gentle but direct. Are you going to tell me what that phone is really about? Before I could answer, the device rang in my hands. Nelson's name appeared on the screen, and in the background I could hear voices, official-sounding commands, the unmistakable sounds of law enforcement activity. I looked at my daughter lying in her hospital bed, finally safe from the man who should have protected her. Then I answered the call. Amos, please, you have to help me. Nelson's voice cracked through the phone, panic evident in every syllable. Behind him I could hear official voices giving commands. The sound of doors opening. Heavy footsteps on hardwood floors. "I'm sorry. I can't hear you very clearly," I said calmly, putting the phone on speaker so Mike could listen. "There seems to be some kind of commotion in the background." "It's the FBI. They're in my apartment right now going through everything. They have a search warrant." "Amos, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Nelson, but I suspect they might be interested in your financial arrangements. Something about tax evasion, maybe? Offshore accounts?" Dead silence except for the sounds of a systematic search in progress. I could picture Nelson's face, the color draining as he realized the scope of what was happening. "How do you know about?" He stopped himself, but it was too late. "About the accounts in the Caymans. The ones where you've been hiding money for 3 years. The same money that could have paid for your wife's medical treatment." My voice remained steady, conversational. "Or did you mean the consulting fees you never reported? The ones that pushed your tax evasion into felony territory?" Agent Martinez's voice came clearly through the phone. "Mr. Hargrove, you need to step away from the safe and keep your hands visible. Amos, please. I know we have our differences, but I'm family. You can't just family." The word tasted bitter. Family means being there when someone needs you. Family means holding their hand during chemotherapy, not celebrating your freedom while they fight for their life. Mai was watching me with wide eyes, understanding finally, dawning about the full scope of what I'd orchestrated. Her expression wasn't shock. It was something closer to awe. "I can explain everything," Nelson continued desperately. "The money, the accounts, all of it. I was planning Tausit for my treatment. I swear I just needed to." "You needed to what? Throw yourself a birthday party first? Bring other women to her apartment while she was in the hospital?" Another voice in the background, professional and clear. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning. You have the right to remain silent. Amos, don't let them do this to me. I'm your daughter's husband. Think about what this will do to her reputation, her standing in the community." I looked at Mai lying in her hospital bed, thin and pale, but with fire in her eyes. She'd been protecting this man's reputation while he spent her medical money on champagne and parties. "My daughter's standing in the community will be just fine," I said. "She's a cancer survivor who was abandoned by her husband. People tend to sympathize with that kind of strength. You, on the other hand, are a man who hid assets while his wife faced terminal illness. How do you think that's going to play in the newspapers?" "The newspapers? You can't be serious. Financial crimes involving federal tax evasion. A Wall Street executive caught hiding millions while his wife battled cancer. Nelson, this is exactly the kind of story the press loves." The sounds of official activity continued in the background. I could hear evidence bags being sealed, digital devices being collected, the methodical process of building a case that would end Nelson's career and freedom. "Agent Martinez is very thorough," I continued conversationally. "She worked with my late wife for years, learned a lot about following financial trails, building airtight cases. She was particularly interested when I mentioned your situation. Your wife worked with the FBI for 23 years, Financial Crimes Unit. She had a lot of friends who were concerned when they heard about how you were treating her daughter. The full realization was hitting him now. This wasn't just about personal revenge. This is about professional law enforcement officers who took white-collar crimes seriously, especially when it involved abandoning sick family members. Amos, I'm begging you. Call them off. I'll pay for everything. All of my treatment, experimental therapies, whatever she needs. I'll liquidate the offshore accounts, pay all the back taxes. Just make this stop." "That's an interesting offer, Nelson. Unfortunately, once the FBI has evidence of federal crimes, individual citizens like me can't really call them off. That's not how the justice system works." Agent Martinez's voice again. "Mr. Hargrove, we're ready to transport you downtown for processing." "Processing? What does that mean?" "It means you're going to jail, Nelson. Tonight, while your wife is in a cancer ward, you'll be in a holding cell. I find that appropriately symbolic. This is insane. You can't destroy my life because you don't like how I handled my marriage." "I didn't destroy your life," I said quietly. "You destroyed your life the moment you chose to celebrate your wife's illness instead of supporting her through it. I just made sure there were consequences." The phone line went quiet except for footsteps and official voices. Then Agent Martinez came on the line. "Mr. Cox, this is Agent Martinez. Mr. Hargrove has been taken into custody. The evidence collection is complete. We found more than enough to proceed with federal charges. Thank you, Agent Martinez. I appreciate your thoroughness. Your wife trained me well. She'd have been proud to see justice served for her daughter." I hung up and looked at my Shua sitting up in bed now, more alert than I'd seen her all day. Dad, was that real? Did you really just have Nelson arrested by the FBI? I provided information about financial crimes to appropriate authorities. They made their own decisions about how to proceed. But how did you know about the offshore accounts? Jake Morrison is very good at his job, and your mother's former colleagues were very motivated to help when they understood the situation. I was quiet for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Then unexpectedly she started laughing, not the bitter laugh of someone who'd been betrayed, but genuine amusement at the elegant justice of it all. He called you for help, she said between laughs. The man who abandoned me called my father for help when the consequences caught up to him. Some people never learn that actions have consequences, I said. But they usually figure it out eventually. Afternoon light streamed through the windows of May's small apartment in Atoria, illuminating canvases propped against the walls and art supplies scattered across a makeshift studio table. She moved around the kitchen with energy I hadn't seen since before her diagnosis, preparing lunch with the focused enthusiasm of someone who'd learned not to take simple pleasures for granted. The oncologist says, "My latest scans are completely clear," she called over her shoulder as she sliced vegetables. 6 months without any trace of cancer cells. That's wonderful news. I sat at her kitchen table watching my daughter inhabit her life again. Really inhabit it, not just survive it. Dr. Ramirez must be pleased. She says I'm one of her success stories. The experimental treatment protocol worked better than anyone expected. I paused in her preparations, looking thoughtful. Of course, having the financial stress removed probably helped my immune system focus on fighting cancer instead of fighting anxiety. Nelson's asset forfeit had covered all her medical expenses and then some. The federal courts had been efficient in seizing his hidden accounts, and victim restitution had been prioritized. Justice, it turned out, sometimes came with practical benefits. Have you heard anything about his appeal? I asked. His lawyer called last month. Nelson wants to reduce his sentence by cooperating with other financial crime investigations. Apparently he knows about a lot of Wall Street corruption. She resumed chopping, her movements precise and confident. I told the prosecutor I had no opinion on whether he deserved consideration. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, I don't think about him much anymore. When someone shows you who they really are during the worst crisis of your life, you stop wondering what might have been different. This version of Mai was stronger than the one I'd found in the hospital a year ago. Not just physically, but in ways that mattered more. She'd learned that she could survive betrayal, illness, and uncertainty. That knowledge had made her fearless about smaller things. Agent Martinez stopped by last week, she continued. She wanted to see how I was doing and to tell me about some financial literacy workshops the FBI runs for fraud victims. She thinks it might be good at helping other people who've been exploited by family members. Would you be interested in that? Maybe. There's something appealing about turning a terrible experience into something that helps others. She brought plates to the table and sat across from me. Speaking of Agent Martinez, she mentioned something interesting about Mom. Oh. She said Mom always talked about how proud she was that her husband understood justice wasn't the same thing as revenge, that you always looked for solutions that fixed problems rather than just punishing people. I thought about that night in the hospital, listening to Nelson panic as his world collapsed. There had been satisfaction in that moment, but not the bitter kind that comes from personal vengeance. It had been the satisfaction of watching systems work correctly, law enforcement catching criminals, consequences matching actions, protection being provided it for the vulnerable. Your mother was the one who taught me that distinction, I said. She used to say that revenge makes you feel better for a moment, but justice makes the world better permanently. Did you ever want revenge? Just pure personal revenge. In the taxi to Skyline Lounge, yes. I wanted to humiliate him, make him suffer the way you'd suffered, but by the time I got there I realized that wouldn't actually help you or change anything fundamental. So you chose the harder path. I chose the path that solved the problem. Nelson wasn't just abandoning you. He was committing federal crimes and would likely do both things again with someone else. Getting him arrested protected you and protected his future victims. My nodded understanding, and it made sure his money went to my medical care instead of his entertainment. That was a bonus, not the primary goal. Wait in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that comes from deep familiarity and mutual respect. Through her window I could see neighbors going about their afternoon routines, walking dogs, carrying groceries, living normal lives that weren't defined by crisis or betrayal. I've been thinking about dating again, Mai said suddenly. How do you feel about that? Nervous, but good nervous, like, I'm ready to trust my judgment about people again. She smiled. Having a father who's willing to coordinate with federal law enforcement makes me feel pretty confident about my safety. I'm retired from the coordinating business. Once was enough. Sure you are. Her tone was teasing but affectionate. Just promise me you'll do background checks quietly if I bring someone home. I make no such promises. She laughed, and the sound was pure joy. Not the careful laughter of someone managing other people's comfort, but the genuine amusement of someone who felt safe enough to be fully herself. Later, as I prepared to catch the train back to Pennsylvania, I looked around her apartment one more time. Art projects in various stages of completion. Medical appointment reminders that showed routine checkups rather than crisis management. Photos of friends and family gathered during her recovery. This is a good life you're building, I told her. It's my life, she said simply. For the first time in years, it feels like mine. Standing at her door, travel bag in hand, I realized that this was what justice actually looked like. Not dramatic courtroom moments or satisfying revenge, but a woman making lunch in her own kitchen, planning art projects, considering new relationships, living without fear or financial anxiety. I'll see you next week, I said. Drive safely, Dad, and thank you for what? For showing me that family means protecting each other, for proving that some people can be trusted to do the right thing, even when it's complicated. Walking toward the subway station in the late afternoon light, I thought about Martha and how proud she'd be of both our daughter's strength and the way justice had ultimately prevailed. Not through anger or personal vendetta, but through patience, careful planning, and faith that systems could work when operated by people who cared about doing the right thing. My phone buzzed with a text from my forgot to tell you. I'm thinking about getting a dog, just so you know, for next time you coordinate with law enforcement. Some things thankfully never change. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.